Well, good Friday morning, and thank you for joining us here for Live Impact News on 13 News Now Plus. My name is Eugene Daniel, coming to you from our streaming studio in Hampton Roads, Virginia. In our studio right now, we have producer Sarah Calloway and that guy right there, meteorologist Craig Moeller. And what a great day we had when it came to the forecast yesterday. Craig, this is what it looks like right now, though, at the Virginia Beach oceanfront. Pretty foggy out there.
Yeah, why would that be the case?
Let me put on my science mind.
You know this stuff because we talk about it all the time. Eugene knows this because he's very smart. He knows that when that air temperature cools down to the dew point, we have saturation, right? The air becomes saturated. Okay. What happens at saturation if the winds are light? Condensation. He was just going to say we're going to see condensation and fog. I'm giving Eugene a hard time.
Look at that. I got it. I don't know what you're talking about. I was right.
What's happened is the winds have shifted, and you know that water temperature right now, Eugene, it's 43 degrees. It's
pretty cool.
So we had temperatures in the 50s and low 60s. The dew point was up a little bit. And then all of a sudden you get this marine layer coming in, dropping the temperature quickly down into the, right now, low 50s at the airport. And with that, you get the fog developing, and that's what you're seeing right there.
Gotcha.
So, kind of giving you a little bit of a hard time, but having some fun as well. Take a look here at the airport conditions. We're at 50. Now, earlier, we were much warmer than that, and we had, you know, at the time, the pressure was falling, and the winds were light or coming from the south and southwest. Now the winds are east-northeast, and the pressure is rising, and that's because that cold front, the backdoor front we were talking about, arrived a little early at Norfolk International. So currently, 50 degrees. It was 51 about 15 minutes or so ago. Temp continues to fall. It's going to stay there for a little while. Let's take a look at some more temperatures across the area. Notice Virginia Beach right now at 53. But, Eugene, this is what's crazy, all right? You take a look at these temperatures that are inland. We're talking about places like Chesapeake, 71. Your winds are west-southwest at 6 miles per hour. So you see that. As we take a look, the temperature is 71 in Suffolk. The winds there in Suffolk, come on, there we go. The winds in Suffolk are also coming in from the south and the southwest. There you go. West-southwest, 6 miles per hour. But at the ocean front at Oceana, 53 degrees. What's going on there? Winds north-northeast. So behind the backdoor cold front, winds north-northeast. Below or ahead of that front, winds still coming up from the southwest. And that, my friends, is why we have temperatures in the low 70s inland and 50 degrees at the airport. You have to love Hampton Roads.
So incredible.
So what happens next? Well, we'll take a look at these temperatures. You can see how far off this model is. Okay, this is something. You take a look here. Model said, 10 o'clock, it's 66. No, it's 50 right now, okay? And this is a story I love to share. I came here in May of 1997 was when I was hired. I started, actually, I think it was July 7th is my anniversary date. But in July of 97, before I got here, talking to a former chief meteorologist, Jeff Lawson, longtime chief here at 13 News Now, great Met. He said, Craig, there are going to be some spring days where you're going to want to pull your hair out. I'm like, what are you talking about, Jeff? He said, no. We get these marine layers, these backdoor fronts that come in. Every model will say, it's going to be this warm or it's going to be that or whatever. And that wind shift comes in. And this time of year with water temperatures in the lower 40s or in some cases right around 40 or even upper 30s, that has such a profound impact on the air just above the sea surface. That blows in, and the bottom drops out of the temps. That's what you're looking at. Now, we anticipated this. It's just here a little bit earlier. And you can see, again, even our graph model, which is a high-resolution, it's a rapid refresh type of a model. And this is powered, the graph model, by Watson. IBM's Watson. It's a great AI, supercomputer, and it still hasn't picked up on this marine layer. So that just shows you how this is playing out. Now, eventually, you can see the graph does lower those temperatures this afternoon, and that's what's going to happen this afternoon. We're going to stay in the low 50s, but notice those inland areas, upper 70s.
Quick little trip to Franklin.
How do you, that's right, run out there, enjoy some sunshine, then back into the ice box.
Shout out to Franklin.
So there you go. This is what we're looking at. We're going to see the temperatures dropping. Those inland areas, that backdoor front may reach those areas later this afternoon or this evening, but it's going to be much warmer for the inland spots for a while. Slight chance of a sprinkle overnight. Don't think we'll see much. Tomorrow, temperatures back into the 70s, mid to upper 70s, and then there will be a chance for showers late Sunday night into early Monday. All right, this is just part of the story. We'll get into the 7-day forecast before I jump off with you guys, but we do want to talk about the big storms that were occurring in the Midwest yesterday and what I think is going to happen today. Sarah, I believe do we still have that live sky view? I think we do.
We just
we've got helicopter aerials right now of Oklahoma, some of the tornado damage that has been done out there from the severe weather we saw. And if you caught us on Live Impact News yesterday morning at this time,
I talked talking about
expressly about the concern for a tornado outbreak maybe in Oklahoma. Well, you're seeing some of the damage there. A number of tornadoes touching down. They weren't necessarily super powerful tornadoes. That's a larger one right there. When you see the lightning kind of backlighting that, you can see that large circulation there. There were 2 fatalities that have been confirmed in Oklahoma, a mother and daughter, and this occurred a little bit north of Oklahoma City. Just really sad. They recovered their bodies. They were in a car, I guess, when this happened. And there are so many different things that can happen. I think anymore when you take a look at some of the, great, kind of TV specials and video documentaries that show storm chasers and some of the stuff they do. It just takes a power pole or a tree coming down or somebody not seeing debris in the road. It's not like the tornado has to pick up the car, carry it away. That's not how most people die in these things. What happens is there's an accident or they get into floodwater or something else kind of complicated associated with that tornado can do it. But in this case, again, a mother and daughter lost their lives.
Yeah, and we're looking at these live images from Oklahoma, as Craig just mentioned there. And Craig, that video that shows the tornado with the lightning coming down, you can get the glimpse of just how big it was. That was my first time seeing that video, and I mean, I'm just fascinated by the size and also just that image in and of itself. It also tells you when you're out there and it's late at night and you're in some of these communities, you also can't always see what is ahead of you too, and I think that was a great example of that. You can't always see it.
It's a great point, Eugene. And honestly, I mean, just to contrast this with what a lot of folks deal with back there, and even here in Virginia, let me tell you this, all right? That area, when you're in the Great Plains, you've got pretty good visibility. I mean, you can see that is flat ground. It's not really mountainous. There's some hills. There are some trees, but it's not like here in Virginia where if you're rolling 64 and you've got trees on both sides and a tornado crosses the highway or the interstate, you may not even know it's there until it's on you. So here, at least in the distance in the Great Plains, you can see those tornadoes at some distance. I will tell you, when I was storm chasing back in college, all right, we used to do this. We'd take a news van out. We didn't have the technology we have now. Now I can take my radar apps, have full access to the full, phase array radar and take a look at everything the National Weather Service has to analyze what's going on. We look at this stuff and we could track it now, but back then we would get out and we would find these things, and we had crude radar, but it wasn't what we have now. You would go into areas and you'd be like, look, I don't have good visual on what's around us right now. So we would actually have to relocate because it would be so uncomfortable. Now people have not only Doppler radars, portable Doppler radars, they set up what we call, I said phase array, but dual pole radars where they can take a look at the dimensions of the debris flying around and the variability. So they're able to get into these storms a lot more safely than we did, quote unquote, back in the day.
And it also speaks to, was it this week or was it late last week where North Carolina had its emergency response kind of testing? It was earlier this week. The days can sometimes blend in together, especially with everything that's gone on just this past week. I think it also speaks to why states do that. And I remember talking to you And I think you said states like Oklahoma, they will have theirs a little bit earlier than a state like North Carolina because of the threat and the seasons. But they do that for a reason. And it's also why we always say, listen, whatever you need to have already available, whether it be in your car, in your home, on your phone, radio, all of those elements so that you can be alerted ahead of time so you know what's happening. This is another good time to remind people of that.
Yeah, and as newscasters, as broadcasters, we have for the longest time always said, hey, make sure you tune in or have your TVs on or whatever. Have a weather, radio, National Weather Service, a weather radio that is going to get you those alarms. That's so important. I would say anymore, and I'm going to reach into my pocket here and pull out my cell phone.
Okay.
We can't stress enough that you have your phones. That's my grandson.
Yeah,
right
I was
there.
about to say, baby Leo made an
Little
appearance.
Leo getting a little show up here on Live Impact News. But the point is, have your digital devices loaded, because you're going to be able to get information like us live streaming right here. If we had severe weather, we could be right now taking this Live Impact News update and giving you extended coverage on that, and that gets pushed out. So where it used to be, make sure you've got a radio nearby, whatever. Now, as much as anything, we're stressing folks need to have their phones charged and ready to go, because you could lose power, you could lose signal, a lot can happen. Gene, before we jump, I do want to very quickly just key on what's going on with the severe weather outlook for today. So, Sarah, if we can take the map, we'll just quickly do this. We'll zoom in. You can see, again, that was the area that was hit right there. Fairview was the town where the 2 fatalities occurred. I was showing that on the weather desk. What we have for you today, still some wet weather, the potential for flooding, heavy rain approaching Chicago. You can see Quincy, Illinois, seeing some of that. Kansas City, Oklahoma City, starting to see some storms. They actually have a new thunderstorm warning just north of Oklahoma City, but later today they've got this level 3 or enhanced threat for severe storms from Iowa through eastern Kansas, western Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. Off to the north, winds in excess of 75 miles per hour, some gusts potentially. Large hail, 2-inch diameter or greater. It looks like Chicago's outside of that area. Earlier yesterday, it looked like they could even see some larger hail, but the best concentration, the best chances for that large hail from Omaha down through Dallas, the Kansas City area, Wichita, those areas. And there's your tornado hot spot. That area is shaded in red. You could see tornadoes all the way up into Wisconsin, Iowa, certainly much of Missouri, Columbia, Missouri, a market I first started in, Mizzou right there, Kansas City, Wichita, down through Springfield, Joplin, Branson, those great tourist destinations in southwest Missouri, down through, you can see Arkansas, Fort Smith, and that whole area just off to the south of Tulsa, all under a level 3 threat. I expect more tornadoes. The threat is greater today than it was yesterday, and we saw the tornadoes yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully people can stay as safe as possible in all of those regions. I'm just sitting here thinking, we were talking about having your phones and the technology and what it allows us to do in preparedness. I was on the other side of this one time when I lived in Illinois. I spent, a number of years there, and we had our team coverage. I happened to be off, and I was watching our team from my phone while I was in my safe space inside of my apartment. So it really does come in handy. Craig, thank you, man, so much. I know we got to take a quick break here, but have a great weekend, my guy.
Hey, I appreciate it. And I just, Sarah, I threw up the 7-day forecast if you want to give Hampton Roads just a real quick peek.
Let's do it.
Temperatures tomorrow back into the 70s again. Cooler this afternoon, much cooler. We've already been in the upper 60s. Now the temps officially falling. Inland areas today in the 70s, but cooler at the coast. Warmer tomorrow. Chances for showers late Sunday. We're springing ahead. Saturday night daylight saving time begins. And then early next week, more spring-like weather. Guys, I know you got to get to a commercial break. Have a great weekend, and we'll keep an eye to that weather.
All right, Craig. Appreciate you. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us here for Live Impact News. We have to talk about the conflict right now between the U.S. and Iran. Particularly today, we're focusing on the impact on everyday Americans when it comes to the economy. Joining us this morning is a guest that we love to have in, Dr. Bob McNabb, economic expert, professor, Old Dominion University. A lot to talk about this morning. But before we get started, I need to bring in something that just came in, seeing this being reported from ABC News, that the U.S. economy lost 92,000 jobs in February, which nearly erases all of the job gain that we saw coming in the month earlier. There were 130 jobs added the previous month in January. Let's start with this. This just came in within the last hour, looking at this new government data. What do you have to say about that? How should we read into this?
Well, let's take a step back and look at the larger picture. The U.S. economy contracted in terms of jobs by 92,000. So there was some factors that were temporary. For example, bad weather, a Kaiser Permanente strike. More troubling was the revision of the December and January job numbers down by 69,000. So everybody who was saying, look, we had 130,000 jobs added in January, that number was revised down. Also, in February, we lost another 12,000 manufacturing jobs, another 10,000 federal civilian employment jobs. So the broad conclusion is not only did job growth weaken considerably in 2025, it's not going to be as strong in 2026. And we see that here in Hampton Roads in Virginia, where the unemployment rate has crept up, and also more troubling, the labor force participation rate, that is how many people out of the labor force that could work are actually working, dropped. So less people are working, less people are participating, slow growth, higher prices. It's not a good combination.
And now add on to that this conflict that we are experiencing. One of the questions I was going to ask you, looking at when it comes to our economy from a job growth, industries perspective, if this were to keep on, how could it potentially impact industries here in the United States?
Well, the easiest way to think about this is what does the increase in oil prices and then fertilizer prices and aluminum and other things feed into the supply chain in the United States? So just look around you. If we look at your car, it uses gasoline. So we know that gasoline prices have increased, will continue to increase in the short term as instability spreads across the Middle East. We know that fertilizer is an input into agriculture. So you would expect the prices of domestic fertilizer to increase, international fertilizer to increase. So what you pay at the grocery store would eventually increase as well. You look at clothing, textiles. Well, guess what? Polyester, for example, is used with petroleum. So if this continued to go on, we'd see the price of clothing rise. So the real concern that a prolonged conflict with Iran would be very simply that job growth is slowing, and this adds fuel to inflation, which was already rising in the latest data. And that would bring up the perfect storm of stagflation, that for the ordinary American, you would see it harder to get a job and retain a job. At the same time, the money that you have to pay for goods and services is increasing.
And again, having to have that conversation on top of what you just said in response to the latest jobs report can't be the sign that you would like to see to start off here in 2026. I want to ask about, let's talk about gasoline. I mean, you just got into it, and we were just talking about looking at the crude oil prices at the moment. The latest I think we saw was somewhere between 85 and 90 per barrel. How does that translate to impacting everyday Americans in terms of what we're getting at the pump?
So there's the spot oil for crude, which is the on-market price, and then we want to look at futures contracts, which are what people believe is going to happen to the price of crude in the future. And the futures contracts market is up and signaling extreme risk. And that's really tied to Iran's action in the Gulf to really shutter traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. And what does that mean? Well, there's good news and bad news here. The good news is the U.S. is in a much better position than it was 10 years ago with domestic oil production. We rely less on imports from the Middle East. We actually rely now more on oil imports from Canada. So we actually need Canada here to help us with oil imports. The rise in domestic oil production, the rise of imports from Canada means we're more shielded from increases in the global price of oil as a result of the Iran conflict. On the other hand, you have to recognize that many of our trading partners are not. Europe is much more dependent on imports of oil from the Middle East, and so is China. And you have to look around your house and go, well, what do I buy that is produced in Europe or in China? And if the price of oil continues to increase, not only does it cost more to manufacture things, it costs more to transport things. That raises the price of imported goods, which, by the way, are now going to be subject to a 15% tariff. So, again, if we are trying to reduce the rate of inflation, if we're trying to address affordability, what we're seeing right now in 2026 is just a lot of pressure to push prices upward.
You know, I'm so glad that you brought up tariffs, because I was sitting here listening to you and I was thinking about this earlier today, just about the interconnectivity of everything when we're talking about global economics, global policy, and some of the things that we've seen through the administration, the decisions that have been made. And I think you can, in a way, be nearsighted and just be thinking about, okay, the players who are in this particular conflict, who are fighting. But to your point, there are a lot of other factors like tariffs that will come into play that are entered into this conversation when you have to depend on other countries across the world for trade and while you're in war.
Yeah. One thing that probably is not on the top of most people's minds is U.S. treasuries, U.S. government debt. So what we've now heard out of the Hill is that the Department of Defense, Department of War, is going to submit a supplemental request to Congress that may be in the order of $100 billion or more dollars to fund the conflict with Iran, because estimates suggest that the burn rate is approaching $1 billion a day, if not more, for munitions, logistics, supply, troops, etc. We have to remember that the U.S. government is running a deficit already. It's going to be higher than $1.5 trillion a year. It's got to refinance another $8 to $9 trillion of debt. So all these things come together into the U.S. government really having to flood bond markets with a lot of debt in the hopes that people will buy it. And that could lead to a situation where you have slower growth in terms of jobs, higher prices, and people view treasuries as more of a risk. We just don't know, but it's a lot more uncertainty when the federal government is running a huge deficit year after year after year. Now, the average homeowner in Hampton Roads goes, why does it care about me? Well, your mortgage rates are largely determined by the yields on the 10 and the 30-year treasury. And so if those yields go up because people are expecting higher inflation, your mortgages on new homes and refinances are going to go up in terms of interest rates.
Another thing we don't know is how long this conflict is going to last. We've heard the president put out some time frames, maybe 4 weeks or more, but then you hear from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who kind of pushes back and said we don't have an exact time that we're going to put out there, but we're prepared to do what we need to do. We're setting the tempo. He said a few different things. Obviously, you have those who are in Iran who believe that they can outlast anything. We really, truly don't know how long this is going to be from a communicated standpoint from our government here. Getting back to the everyday cost also that we're experiencing, we talked about gasoline and at the pump. You just hit on mortgages. Are there any other things every day that we could see maybe impacted maybe more than gasoline? We talked about groceries. I would imagine transportation at this time, mind you, we have, DHS is still unfunded and you have those employees there. Are there any other areas that we could see impacted for everyday Americans when they're trying to just live?
Well, you're going to see it appear in the prices of jet fuel, for example. So airlines which have returned mostly the profitability are going to struggle, and those costs are going to be passed on to passengers.
Yeah.
You'll see it in terms of shipping companies that are going to face higher costs as well. And they're already operating on thin margins, so those costs will have to be passed on to consumers as well. So let me give you an example. One of the things that Amazon does is they offer free 2-day shipping for Prime members. If the costs of transportation continue to increase dramatically, that 2-day may go to something longer. You may find certain products are not available in a short window. They've invested heavily in EV technology, but again, at the end of the day, the people who are creating the products and bringing them to Amazon and Amazon is selling, well, they don't have those EV infrastructures as well, so electric vehicles. So it really is an economy that at its core is dependent upon petroleum products. And so crude oil, natural gas, and other byproducts as well. And when things become uncertain, prices tend to rise. And we're not only seeing that at the pump. We saw prices at the pump increase 10, 15 cents per gallon overnight. That will start bleeding into grocery store prices, restaurant prices, clothing prices. And the longer this goes on, it just will push up the general rate of inflation. And then the Federal Reserve is between the rock and a hard place with the weaker job reports and higher prices, and they really are going to probably come down on combating inflation rather than jobs.
I was just about to ask you if we could potentially see any pressure on the Fed with all of this if it were to continue, especially when you think about the backdrop, the pressure that's already been on them over the last year since the president has been in office to lower those interest rates. How you think this all plays into that? I was literally just about to ask you that next.
So, if we look but for the war in Iran, if we ask what was the position of the Fed going into last week, we had significantly weaker job growth in 2025. Today just came out retail sales were underperformed in January. Non-farm payrolls underperformed in February. Right, there was a mounting evidence that while gross domestic product was increasing, that the economy for the average American was doing worse. Right, higher unemployment, slower job growth, and so and moderation of inflation, which was the good news. So it actually was teeing up the Fed to basically cut interest rates in the second half of the year, because the Federal Reserve was like, we need to see more evidence, right? We think the economy is slowing. We think price growth is moderating. We need to shift our focus to job growth and away from price growth. This kind of flips the story on its head, where the Federal Reserve is like, we can't let inflation come back. We can't go back to 2022. And this is cost push inflation. This is costs are rising. They're feeding into the supply chain, and then prices rise. That's much different than demand pull inflation, where people want a lot of stuff, they're bidding up prices, and the Federal Reserve says, hey, we're going to raise interest rates to tamp down demand. No, this is the problem of, all of a sudden we've got this huge surge of cost potentially coming in the system. We don't care as much as jobs. We really got to address that. So you're seeing bond markets react accordingly. They're basically going, well, I don't think this is going to push the Fed into another rate cut. It may actually push that out into the future. And the inflation hawks are going to go, look, we're seeing evidence now that prices are accumulating and the pace of growth is increasing, and we probably shouldn't cut interest rates.
And this all coming as we just saw celebration of mortgage rates reaching below 6% for the first time we've seen in a few years. Sarah, let's take a quick break. We'll be right on the. We'll come right back here in a few minutes with more on the economic impact of this conflict between the U.S. and Iran. Thanks for staying with us here for Live Impact News. We're talking about the economic impact of the U.S.-Iran conflict right now. We have Dr. Bob McNabb from Old Dominion University here speaking with us. And you know, it's interesting when you look at the timing of all of this, right? Right now, there are several states that are doing their primaries for elections. We're getting ready for a big midterm election here in the United States, and several states gearing up. You know, the Trump administration has really, had these briefings daily to try to say these are the reasons why this needed to happen now. When it comes to everyday Americans, obviously we're talking about the impact of the economy. Where do you kind of see when it comes to longstanding support that people might have for this if this were to continue longer than what we initially anticipated?
Right. So we could look at historical evidence, and the best thing we have are opinion surveys of the popularity of military action. And so I think if everybody went back to, for example, 9/11 and the support for going into Afghanistan, very, very high. And Iraq was also fairly high relative to previous conflicts. So what if we go back to Vietnam? If you look at public opinion at the end of the Vietnam conflict, it was roughly 3 out of every 10 Americans said we should be in Vietnam. The most recent polling data we've seen is somewhere around 25 to 28% of Americans think we should be in a conflict with Iran. Now, there's significant differences in terms of party affiliation, but it suggests that the base of support that has been enjoyed by previous presidents with previous military actions may not be there this time around. And also consumer confidence, if we go back to asking how do people feel about the state of the economy, it still is quite low compared to where it was prior to COVID. So the American consumer right now is decidedly unhappy. and they're primarily unhappy about prices. They feel, especially younger generations, that the American dream is unaffordable, unattainable, and that it's truly out of reach for many people in terms of how much I'm paying in rent. There's no way I could save up for a house, and even if I have enough money for a house, the housing market is so locked up that there's not really enough supply or building to really provide me something that I could have access to. So that political environment coincides with the economic environment that suggests that there's going to be a lot of worry by the president's party, in my opinion, about a prolonged war with Iran, using the president's and Secretary of War's terminology, that it would undermine their potential performance in the primaries and then, of course, in the midterms.
Yeah, you can imagine, we've heard them say it, they don't want a elongated war, a forever war. You would imagine they would want this conflict to be over much sooner than later. But again, those questions that, several people have now raised. You have Democratic leaders like our senators here in Virginia, Mark Warner, Tim Kaine, who say they're just, to them, even after getting the briefing, no reason why they heard that we needed to do this in terms of any imminent threat to the U.S. But then you have the Trump administration who are saying, hey, Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. That poses a threat to everyone. And then also we felt that they were going to strike in some capacity before we did so we acted first, right? So it'll be interesting as we continue going through this, depending on how long it goes, what the messaging is to try to continue to get the support from people here within our country. But speaking of the people within our country, we were talking about economy, we were talking about jobs. What kind of jobs are most affected, when we're entering into a conflict like this?
Well, I think we have to step back and recognize one of the things that's happening today is the impact of artificial intelligence, AI, on the workforce at the same time that we're seeing conflict with Iran and really sour consumer sentiment. So if you look at, for example, the performance of the U.S. economy, gross domestic product, and you look at forecasts for 2026, they're actually quite positive. Many people believe the U.S. economy is going to grow 2.5%, 3.5% this year. And the question then becomes, well, how can you have that occurring at the same time you have weak job growth? Well, what we're seeing is that a lot of companies are saying, look, I'm shedding workers, 20, 30, 40% of my workforce, because I could achieve the same things with artificial intelligence. So you're seeing a divorce between the performance of the overall economy and the income and wealth of the ordinary Americans and how the stock market is performing and how the higher income end of the economy is going. And so what that means is that if you're looking for how this war, this conflict is going to promote economic activity, obviously defense contractors. We've seen, for example, the U.S. Use a significant amount of munitions with regards to, for example, Patriot weapon systems to shoot down drones and ballistic missiles and other things. Increasing that capacity is now so important, especially for our allies in the region. And at a tactical level, some of the publicly available estimates suggest that we're doing a phenomenal job, that detection and intercept rates are 80 to 90%. But the difficulty is that the Iranians, from their perspective, is, yes, if we fire 100 and hit with 10, that's a success. On our side, we're judged by, if you hit with 10 out of 100, we're not very much successful. So it's a difference in perspectives in remembering that the U.S. is not the only player in this conflict. The Iranians got a vote on how this plays out also. So tactically, I think we're doing quite well. Strategically, there's competing interests here that need to be balanced.
We obviously are in one of the largest military communities in the world here in Norfolk. I'm trying to stick straight to an economic portion because we know we already have the Ford that's in the middle of all of this out there. So there's a direct impact for our people here who are stationed. But are there any specific economic impacts that you are seeing or you could foresee based upon this conflict that is specific to Hampton Roads because of our military imprint?
So, yes, short term, long term. Short term, we're already feeling it, right? The extended deployments of naval personnel and other people that may follow, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, it means that they're taking their money with them essentially to where they're deployed. So if you deploy a carrier battle group, it's thousands and thousands of sailors sailing out of Norfolk. And as those deployments get extended, yes, they're getting paid all that time, but they're not spending the money here. And some of their dependents also leave. They go back home because they have children that need to be taken care of, and so they move back with their parents or siblings. And that, in the short term, that means we're going to see a slowing of economic activity just because so many people have been deployed and for a long time. Mm-hmm. The good news is when those deployments end, they come back and we see a burst of spending from that. So if you're a restaurant or a barbershop right next to a base, you're probably feeling this already, and you're going to continue to feel this as long as the deployments continue. In the longer term, one only has to drive around Hampton Roads and look at the number of ships undergoing maintenance and look at what Huntington Ingalls is building to realize that there's going to be a huge demand for increased maintenance of a fleet that's been really run rough in terms of deployment schedules over the last year. And we've heard the stories of extended deployments that defers maintenance, and when those ships come back into the port, they're going to need work to get ready for the next deployment.
So that's one of those areas where you expect we could see some significant growth within that particular sector because, as you said, they're going to need somebody to work on those ships.
Right. And so the Navy's already behind on maintenance. The Navy's already behind on shipbuilding. So if you're looking at Hampton Roads and going, well, what might be something good to get into, something affiliated with that, because the demand is probably going to be there for a longer period of time. You think about your car. If you took your car on a cross-country trip and then you drove it back and forth and back and forth 5 or 6 times and never changed the oil, at some point your engine's going to need more than an oil change. And yes, carriers are not cars, but then I think the analogy kind of applies here.
Yeah, it does. That's good. That's good. I love my old girl, but to your point, I'm not going too far. I'm trying to keep it on the maintenance schedule. Can we talk taxes a little bit?
Sure.
Because I think it's one of those conversations I haven't heard from someone directly. When we're in these situations, traditionally, historically, have we seen an impact on taxes for our country, for everyday Americans, or how do you foresee that playing into all of this?
Well, over the last 40 years, the answer has been no. That essentially we've used debt to finance the campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan and increased tempo of operations. There appears to be absolutely no appetite in Congress now for higher taxes or tax reform or expenditure restraint for many things. So you end up with the fact that when the Department of Defense, Department of War, legally Department of Defense, popularity, it's Department of War, when they come to the president and say, we need additional money, and the president goes to Congress, it's going to be financed with debt. It's previously, historically, World War II, World War I, and so forth, it would have been an additional levy. There would have been, we have to fund this and then pay it off. We just haven't been doing that for 50 years.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking about that, and I'm sure even the conversation of trying to increase taxes for this would be a political no-go for a lot of people in that, but I at least wanted to give that question in there. We kind of touched on the financial markets as well, but from the context of those who are maybe looking at their 401k, looking at their savings right now, with things changing, I'm assuming any day, every day when you're looking at this, what are you seeing, and what would you maybe recommend or tell people as they're trying to monitor their own situations financially?
Well, I think the best piece of advice I've always given is don't panic and don't react to the 24/7 news cycle. And that's very hard because you are constantly bombarded with information that makes you feel like you got to do something to be in control of your life. If we look at the performance of the stock market, for example, if you're invested in the stock market in a 401k, then significant downturns do occur. We do see significant drops in value. And that's when people make the worst decisions of their lives, typically by going, oh, I've lost 40%, I'm going to sell and get out and put it. That locks in your losses. Most of the time, the markets recover within 3 or 4 years. Patience there is a virtue. It actually pays off. So you have to really step back, and I know it's hard, and think long term. And I talk to my adult sons about this all the time. You're in your 20s. You have the miracle of compound interest working for you. Every dollar you put away now is going to be so much more when you're in your 50s and 60s than ever I had a chance to do, because I didn't really have a retirement plan into my mid-30s. So, I've been playing catch up all my life, and I've been lucky to be in a position where I've had a 401k or 403b to invest in. And so what I've told them is that when that opportunity presents itself, put your money in from that first paycheck. Take that 8 or 10% in from your first paycheck. Then you never will miss it. You'll just live off what your paycheck is. That 8 to 10% is never gone. And in economics, we know that humans are kind of lazy. That inertia is a thing. That if you automatically enroll somebody in a retirement plan, they typically don't go in and change it. But if you ask them to voluntarily enroll in a retirement plan, they typically don't enroll unless they have a nudge. And so I've been nudging my sons to, hey, put your 8 or 10% in and just ignore it and let it grow over time. Don't worry about the market. Don't watch the news. If it goes down, it goes down. If it goes up, it goes up. 20 years from now, you'll be amazed at how much you have. And I think that's the best sort of advice I could give is if your time horizon is more than 10 years, turn off your phone. I know, I shouldn't say turn off your TV. Turn on your TV, turn off your phone. But in reality, just kind of, you got to take a step back, take a deep breath, and take a longer view. If you're under 10 years, maybe you're going to have to start thinking about reallocating more into bonds, reducing your risk. But you also have to realize now that many people are saving for retirements that are 20 or 30 years. And so you need what used to be the sage advice of you retire and you put everything in bonds is no longer applies if you're living 20 years past your retirement. You need to still generate returns. And so a financial advisor that works in your fiduciary interest is somebody you might want to talk to at the end of the day.
I think that's solid advice. I'm so happy the way that you broke that down and told it through, because there are a lot of people. I've had personal conversations with people who are watching this as, things are just changing. We've seen it happen a few different times over the last few years and whatever. But having that long view, I think, is so great to hear from you, to tell people, because there's folks who are doing just that, looking at their phones and trying to make assessments. So we got a few minutes here. Anything else that you feel like our viewers should really kind of keep in mind when it comes to an economic perspective of what's going on right now in this conflict?
Right. I think what you want to look at if you're thinking about how is this going to play out economically is thinking about really it boils down to supply chains. It really boils down to logistics and cost. And we are seeing playing out at a much larger scale than Russia and Ukraine, the U.S. and Iran competing in terms of their ability to put weapon systems into play. Iran has invested a lot in Shahed drones, which are relatively cheap. the U.S. has more interceptors of a wide variety of types, because everybody thinks Patriot $4 million a missile. No, but there's a lot of other much lower cost versions out there. And that evolution of the battlefield is really driven by cost.
Yeah.
It becomes an economics problem, right? Who can maintain the longest for the cheapest?
Yeah.
And you could apply that in your personal life as well. That there is, if you look at your personal life, and one of the things you can do to really insulate yourself financially is take a hard look at your budget. Take a hard look at what you're spending your money on. And some people don't have anything to move on. They're for whatever reason, they're really constrained. But a lot of us have subscriptions, have payments, go to a coffee shop, go to fast food, and those choices add up over time to eat up a significant amount of your money and add stress to your life. So if you're trying to reduce stress in your life by giving yourself some financial wiggle room, and if you have enough income to do that, then really saying, okay, I'm going to make some choices in the short term to maybe cancel these subscriptions, maybe to eat out less, maybe to do this, to build up that cash reserve. Then you have more cushion, and then you will sleep better at night.
I feel like you were just speaking directly to me. Some of those things I've been doing here within the last few months, and so great advice there. Dr. Bob McNabb, ODU, our economic expert, professor extraordinaire, coming in and breaking all of this down for us. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Friday and talking about this conversation. I think this is actually a good time. We mentioned that we had been hearing from our senators here in Virginia, one of those being Mark Warner, who is amongst those who would have been the first to be briefed about what is going on in the conflict with Iran. We're going to play remarks that he made to a group of reporters here just within the last several hours, and just want you to listen to him where he kind of stands on everything right now. This after the Senate failed to move forward with a war powers resolution, which would have limited the president's ability moving forward when it comes to this conflict. So let's listen to what Senator Mark Warner has to say.
Good morning, everyone. And obviously a lot is going on here, so let me get right into it. We are now on day 6 on President Trump's war of choice against Iran. Let me say at the outset, obviously I'm going to shed no tears over the deaths of the Iranian leadership. The leadership and the regime has been awful to the 92 million Iranians, but also enormously anti-American, anti-Israeli. But it still begs the question of why now and why during this time frame. So far, we have seen from the administration 4 different answers on why this war of choice was started. First, it was supposed to be about the Iranian nuclear capabilities that the president bragged had been completely obliterated last June. Obviously, they weren't obliterated. Second was about the growing challenge of Iran's ballistic missiles. And yes, that is a growing concern, but there was no imminent threat to the United States, for that matter, even an imminent, immediate threat to Israel. Then there was the concern about the Iranian Navy, which I only heard in the last briefing. And then there's been the on and off about the regime change. The question I have, the president has asked for the Iranian people to take back their government, but if the Iranian people show up with 100,000 protesters in Tehran, Iran's capital, and the Iranian Republican Guard, the military, kill 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 of them, does America have obligation to go in and protect those protesters? We don't have an answer on that. I've also been particularly concerned about so many of our sailors who are in now the conflict zone, who are home ported out of Norfolk. I think about the Gerald Ford, our largest carrier that is now approaching month 9 of its deployment. Originally was going to go to the Mediterranean, then it was sent to Venezuela, now it's back to the Mediterranean. And I heard on Sunday when I was in Virginia Beach and Norfolk and Chesapeake from friends and family members of those sailors who are deeply concerned about when their loved ones are going to get back, how much danger there's in, and what is the purpose of this war. We know the administration has acknowledged that it is going to be weeks and maybe months more, and I still don't believe there is a clear purpose. It was one of the reasons why I voted yesterday for Tim Kaine's War Powers Resolution. If the president is choosing to take our nation to war, the president ought to come to the American public and the Congress and ask for a declaration of war and make the case. He has not done so. I'd also point out, and while our focus should appropriately be on our fellow Virginians who are in harm's way or the 6 service members who've been killed in the conflict, and with the expectation of more casualties to come. Again, the President and the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth's own words. We also need to look at the cost. We don't have any estimate of the amount of cost of this war. We do know that, for example, every Tomahawk missile that's fired costs about $2.4 million. That it has cost close to $1 billion to assemble the forces in the region. And again, this is a choice. This is an administration that chose not to fund health care for millions of Americans in terms of the tax credits. This is an administration that's chosen to cut Medicaid, although most of those cuts won't take place until after the elections. Administrations that's dramatically cut back on food assistance for needy families. This is an administration that's dramatically cut back on research and development. So the question of how large will this bill be and what other domestic programs will have to be cut to pay for these bills is unknown at this point. And again, I remind people, this was the president who was going to get us out of endless wars in the Middle East. And if there's one thing we should have learned from the last 30 years, it's a lot easier to get yourself into a war in the Middle East than it is to get yourself out of a war in the Middle East. So with that, why don't I turn it over to Catherine and be happy to take your questions.
Senator, the first question is from Mitchell with WTOP.
Hi, Senator. Thanks a lot for joining us this morning. I have a 2-part question related to some of the things you just touched on related to Iran. Defense industry officials are going to meet with the president tomorrow, and amid these reports of possible munitions and interceptor shortages as the war keeps going, what concerns, if any, do you have about that possibility? And related to the cost, do you think Congress will be willing to come up with a military supplemental related to the overall war effort?
Well, we've seen a drawdown of our munitions, not just because of, for example, our strikes against the Houthis, but this president, I think, has had 7 military interventions, including Nigeria, including Venezuela, including Syria, Iraq. And so we have to increase our defense industrial base. But it is clear that while the administration is saying they've got enough immediate bombs itself, some of the other interceptors, should the Iranians shoot more at us, those are low. If the president is going to ask for a supplemental, I'm sure we'll take a look at it. But again, this is all about choices. I wish the president would also come back with a supplemental saying, we need to actually return health care to the millions of Americans who've lost it. We will take a look at his request, but there needs to be clarity on what the goals are of this war and how long it's going to take. We do control the skies over Iran at this point, but I don't know how, with a bombing campaign only, you meet all of even the goals the president's outlined, like getting rid of all of Iran's military industrial base. I don't know if you can do that with a bombing-only effort. And I think the overwhelming majority of Americans do not want boots on the ground. And I'll point out the president has not ruled that out.
The next question is from Tom with Fox 5. Tom, are you there? Okay, our next question is from Audra with Sinclair Broadcast Group.
Thanks, Senator. I appreciate you staying consistently available, even as this is unfolding. We're closely tracking the impact on gas prices, up 27 cents from a week ago. First, as news reporting is suggesting this morning, from what you've seen, do you believe the administration's planning for this war to last at least through September? And then, obviously, the impact on drivers would be devastating if that happens. As the president says he wants to do, is it even feasible for the U.S. Navy to escort tankers through the Strait of Hormuz? Thank you.
We've known that the narrowness of the Straits of Hormuz makes it very easy to block, or the Iranians could even sink some of their own vessels there to cut off those straits, which would, in many ways cripple the energy supplies, not just for America, but for countries around the region. We've already seen, as you said, gas prices go up 27 cents. As we get into the spring and summer season, that's going to really provide a major hit on Americans' pocketbooks. That, combined with the fact that the inflation numbers are coming in higher. This is a president that is not focused on affordability, no matter how many times the White House tries to send him out on this subject. He has no record of affordability. I pray that this war will not last till the fall. I've not heard any projection that far in advance. But if we don't have a clear set of goals, when do we declare victory? Is this going to be simply when the president gets tired of the war, or when gas prices get too high? I still continue to worry that we don't have the level of support from our allies that we normally would, and that has the potential to prolong the conflict as well. So I think Americans are going to see the price at the pump rise dramatically, and it'll get much worse if the Straits of Hormuz are closed. And I have not heard of any reasonable plan where you could have escorts of these tankers, particularly through that narrow stretch of sea. I'm open to somebody convincing me, but I've not seen anybody rationally propose that kind of a workable situation.
The next question is from Jada with ABC 13.
Hi, Senator Warner. I have a question pertaining to ICE. So Governor Spanberger is telling ICE they need to obtain judicial warrants to detain illegal aliens, but we recently had a case here in Virginia where an illegal immigrant with an extensive and violent criminal history has been released back into the community several times due to this rule and has now stabbed and killed another woman.
All right, you were just listening to Senator Mark Warner of here in Virginia talking about the conflict between the U.S. and Iran. This is just after we had a very insightful conversation on the impact on the economy with Dr. Bob McNabb there of Old Dominion University. So a lot of things to kind of keep in mind as we watch this conflict unfold in the Middle East. We're going to take a break right now, but when we come back, we have another guest. And here we're talking about suicide prevention, and particularly the tips and things in which we would hope for people to know. So stick with us here. In just a few minutes, we'll have another great conversation here on Live Impact News. Well, thank you for staying with us here on Live Impact News. We want to take you live to Chicago right now, where the late Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., his family, is about to hold a public homegoing service for him there, and there are going to be a lot of big name speakers at the Civil Rights Icons services here today. We're talking former President Barack Obama expected to speak, former President Joe Biden expected to speak and be in attendance. They're expecting to hear from former Vice President Kamala Harris as well, and of course the Reverend Al Sharpton, who considered Jesse Jackson Sr. a mentor to him. You can see there within the room, there are several thousands of people who are expected to pack the House of Hope there in Chicago. This after they have basically been on a bit of a tour for the last week since we first reported of his death about a week and a half ago at the age of 84 years old. They have had stops, obviously, in Chicago where they started, where people can have visitations there at the Rainbow Push Coalition headquarters. Then they traveled down to South Carolina just earlier this week, where he lied in honor, and federal, state, local officials were able to share their memories, kind words of him from the state capitol there in South Carolina, which, by the way, is the state in which Jesse Jackson Sr. was born. So this is going to start at noon. Our time, 11 o'clock Central Time there in Chicago. We can expect that we're going to hear a lot from a lot of different people today speaking on the life and legacy of Jesse Jackson Sr. Just wanted to take you there live. there really briefly as they are getting things underway. And you can see they're a very packed house there this morning. But now we want to turn our attention to a very important conversation regarding suicide prevention. This after a couple of high-profile deaths have taken place here recently. Martin Short's daughter, Catherine Short, died at the age of 42 just a few weeks ago by suicide. We also saw that it has been confirmed that former Lizzie McGuire star Robert Carradine, he also was confirmed to have died by suicide. So connected to a couple of very high-profile actors there that has started a lot of conversation, not only across the country, but particularly here amongst us at 13 News Now. And so we wanted to bring somebody in to help us navigate through this conversation. And what are some of the things you and your family, your loved ones can talk about? So joining us this morning is Susanna Urosky with the National Alliance of Mental Illness, or NAMI, to talk about mental health, suicide prevention. Thank you so much, Susanna, for taking some time and talking to us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the time to highlight this.
So in talking through this, right, can we first start with, if you're a loved one and you notice something maybe off with someone else that you love and you're around all the time, are there signs that you can see? Or I've even heard it from people, sometimes you may not even see anything is wrong. What would you tell for loved ones who may be finding themselves in that position?
Well, so there were a couple questions there. Yeah. So what are possible signs? So there can be specific things that they're saying. There can be behaviors. There can be a change in mood. So some signs can be if they're actually expressing a desire to no longer live, saying that they're maybe a burden to others, that they have no desire to live. The behaviors can range. They can be looking for means to end their life. They can be giving away prized possessions. They can be saying goodbye to people. Where looking back, it can seem obvious. And then with mood, it can be obvious signs of depression, could be anxiety, it could be a change in behavior that could be sleeping more often. So there are numerous signs.
How do you approach the conversation if you see any of those signs and you may suspect that this could potentially be something that is on their minds? How do you start that talk?
Yeah, and that is important to start the talk, because that can be scary for some people to have that conversation. And really what comes to the top of my head right away is asking that question, are you thinking of hurting yourself? Are you thinking of killing yourself? A lot of people think that will then put the thought into your head when it really does not. Research indicates it does not at all. And it really just lifts a burden off of the person's shoulders, and they can feel seen and heard. So I know it's difficult to have those conversations because I come to this conversation as a representative from NAMI, but I have also lost a loved one to suicide. So I know that those conversations are important to have, because we can't prevent every tragedy, but it is important to be able to recognize warning signs so people can speak up and say, I'm worried about you. Is there something going on? I've noticed that you're sleeping most of the day. Just being present, and you don't always have to have the right words to say, but listening and being there is the most important thing.
I'm so glad you said that, because my follow-up question, if you do ask that question and they say yes,
yeah,
what's the next step?
If they say yes to wanting to hurt themselves, then and that can be alarming for someone to hear. Mm-hmm. It's important for the person who asked the question to remain calm. And then if there are lethal means present, helping to remove those, and then reaching out for the appropriate support. I would, depending on the situation, if it was active with the lethal means right there, I would immediately call 911. Otherwise, I think a great place to start is a resource that we have nationally, 988. You can text, you can chat. It's an amazing resource.
Would you say their approach, by your recommendation, does it change whether or not the person is an adult versus maybe a child, in how you start that conversation and then how you respond based upon what they say?
Yeah, well, I think it all depends.
Yeah.
Is that your child? And having that conversation naturally will look different, how you approach it. Your wording may be different. It may just sound like, I'm really worried about you. Let's get the help that you need. You're not alone. You're not a burden. I love you no matter what's going on. So let's get the help that you need, because they're looking to you as the trusted adult to find those resources. And it can be very scary for families. And so having those conversations are so important because we want to prevent future tragedies.
This is great information, and I'm appreciative of how you are even in this coaching, us through the process of maybe having those dialogues. You mentioned before that sometimes it's just about being near, being close. Are there any other just actions you would recommend, or just ways in which we might be able to journey with someone through this process?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So, well, I think something you touched on in the beginning was that we don't always know that. I think that's what you said. Mm-hmm. It isn't always visible.
Yeah.
And so even reaching out to those that we care about and asking them, how are you really doing? That can open the door. And we know our loved ones the best, and being present is everything. And sometimes even offering, if they've never been to therapy, let's use that for example. Would you like? I can drive you there. And then we can go for lunch afterwards. And you don't have to be a mental health professional. I'm not a mental health professional. But being a friend, being a good friend, listening, and just being present, because that sense of community, that sense of support is everything.
How often would you say is maybe appropriate for checking back in with someone? Let's say I'm a friend. I don't live with you every day, but we've had this initial conversation, and I know, based upon what you've confided in me, that this is something that you're experiencing. How often as a friend would you say I should maybe check back in and say, hey, how are you doing, to where it doesn't maybe become burdensome?
Oh, yeah. So I think that depends on what the friend has shared with you. So if you were just sensing something and you've opened the door to a potential conversation, they might not necessarily, be open to having that conversation yet. But I think it depends on your friendship. But there are some people that I check in with that just with a simple heart emoji to say, I'm thinking about you, so they know that I'm there for them if they're ready or need to talk. But if they have confided in you, then I would say daily, depending on the severity of the situation.
And we, mentioned that, and part of our reaching out to you all was because we saw these deaths that obviously have been reported, national outlets, people who quite popular because they're actors, etc.
Yeah.
Is there any research, or in your experience, does that influence or impact anybody who may already be having those thoughts? Or I'm assuming it, at the very least, for those who have loved ones who have died by suicide, it could be a trigger. How do those situations potentially play into the conversation that we're having, if at all?
Yeah, well, exposure to a suicide is a risk factor along with other risk factors. And risk factors don't necessarily mean that someone will try to end their life. But exposure to suicide is one of the risk factors. And as we know, with every death, it affects the person, the family, the community. There's that ripple effect is huge. And so, yes, you always do run that there's a significant concern that there will be others in the community who are vulnerable, who maybe have numerous risk factors, who then see that as, kind of an extra push in the wrong direction.
And, you mentioned, and again, thank you so much. We have Susanna Urosky here with National Alliance of Mental Illness, or NAMI, here within our area of Hampton Roads. And you mentioned that you too have experienced this in your own family. And the question I want to ask next is, for those who have and are still grieving and going through this process, how do you encourage? How do you support? How do you kind of stand beside and be with people who are going through that, as you've said yourself, you are?
Yeah. Well, another good question. There's so much stigma surrounding mental illness, and especially with suicide. So I personally have experienced all different reactions. Some good friends who couldn't even say a word to me, and then others who were there who were just friends who became so much more. I would say, similar to the answer I gave you on the other question, it depends on your friendship. There really are no words to make the situation better, obviously, but once again, being present and just saying, I'm so sorry that this has happened, and I can't imagine what you're feeling. And depending on that friendship, I'm here for you, for anything. I'm here.
I think that's a challenge for so many people who haven't experienced. How do you, as you said, how can I be present? And how can I be there without feeling like I need to do something at all times? So I think that's important for people to hear from you in that case. And here, you're here representing NAMI. So what are the resources and the opportunities through your organization that people in our community, or maybe beyond here in Hampton Roads, they might be able to reach out to you for?
Yeah, well, the good news, NAMI is a national organization. So we are the local affiliate that serves this area, but NAMI offers free educational classes, support groups, mental health presentations. That's how we became a part of it. Our daughter was released from the psychiatric hospital with her first manic break when she was 19, and someone advised that we take the family-to-family educational course, all free resources. And we just learned a wealth of information to help us better support our daughter. So it really is an incredible organization, and I'm proud to represent it.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the other resources as well, the hotline to...
Yeah, 988.
Yes, I mean, and we have it here on our screen there, just in case. Again, it is 988. It is as simple as picking up the phone and making that phone call with those digits there. And we talk about being present. We talk about raising, just asking the question and feeling comfortable about that. Are there any other things that you feel like people need to hear who are watching and listening to this at this moment that could potentially help them maybe save a life, or to maybe help them process what they're going through when it comes to suicide prevention?
Yes, I would say, number one, you're not alone. You're not alone. And because when there is that feeling of hopelessness and despair, you really do feel all alone, and you're the only person experiencing it. So number one, you are not alone. And number two, stay hopeful. And there are resources out there. And just reach out and we can connect you with those services that can help support you and just help you survive and thrive.
Everybody, we have Susanna Urosky here, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, or NAMI. Thank you so much for taking time and such an important conversation and the way that you've navigated this with us this morning. We really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much for taking time today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I think that's a good point for us to take a quick break, and we'll be right back here with more on Live Impact News. Thank you for joining us here again, sticking with us on Live Impact News. Remember, if you are watching us on YouTube right now, we appreciate it, but definitely would want for you to consider downloading our app, our streaming app, 13 News Now Plus. You can get it on your TV, on Roku, Amazon Fire and on Apple TV. It is free. You can get this stream and so many other forms of content that are specifically for our streaming app here at 13 News Now. Okay, I got to let you see something real cute here real quick. You see that? Oh, my gosh. Isn't that lovely? Isn't that lovely? Well, that is our fur cast with the Hope for Life Rescue. You can see there as we are counting down the days for Pause for Charity Day. That's where we raise money and resources for Hope for Life Rescue. And then also we even, push for adoptions. You can adopt as well. Or if you don't have the capacity to adopt, maybe you can babysit or dog sit, test it out for a few days, right? You have that ability as well. So every Friday leading until Pause for Charity Day, which is on March 18th, we are going to be showing you this here. Oh my gosh. A great look. You can catch this for 4 hours straight, I do believe, on 13 News Now Plus. So if you need, just that little bit of positivity, Sarah, just having a tough day, your Friday, you're almost there to the weekend, and you need something that's going to bring you a little bit of joy. How can you be upset looking at puppies wagging their tails? You can't.
You can't. Do you have any pets?
I don't. But I will say, last year, we had Pause for Charity, the day, and Marta went out and did a live shot, and there was one particular dog, beautiful, that had 14 puppies, and they showed the 14 puppies, and I fell in love with one on air. I mentioned it on air. They brought the puppy to the station. I got to hug the puppy, we bonded, and I was this close. And then I asked several people who know me well, should I adopt a pet right now? They said no. So I did not. But several people did that day. They also gave money as well, and you can too. So help us support a phenomenal cause here within our community, Pause for Charity, there here in Hampton Roads. So, all right, we got to come off of it real quick. But, oh, I know. Exactly. You see what I'm saying? It's Friday. Let's just keep this up for the rest of the day. But we do. So please stick with us. March 18th is going to be the big day and help us support a great cause in our community. All right, we do want to go back to Chicago. As we see, it is now, the energy is there as the celebration of life for Jesse Jackson Sr. is now underway. I do believe the official program is supposed to start at noon, but you can see there they couldn't wait that long. They had to go ahead and get things flowing. This is in Chicago. Jesse Jackson Sr., as we have reported, particularly the day that it happened, died at the age of 84. The Jackson family has now gone from Chicago for a few days of viewing. They went down to South Carolina while he lied in honor there at the state capitol in the place where he was born there in South Carolina, and now they are back for this public celebration of life for all of the community to be. And then I do believe they will have a private for the family ceremony tomorrow or at a later date. But we're going to go ahead, for those who have been wanting to tune in to witness the homegoing service for the late Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. We'll let you go ahead and listen in.
Hallelujah. I got a testimony.
You're watching live there the homegoing service in Chicago, Illinois for the late Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. It is a packed house there at the House of Hope in Chicago. We are expecting some very high-profile names to be speaking and to be in attendance today. That includes former President Barack Obama and Joe Biden and former Vice President Kamala Harris in attendance. We're also expecting to hear from the Reverend Al Sharpton, who considers Jesse Jackson Sr. his mentor. We've already seen a few people in the audience today. I do believe, Sarah, you said that you spotted Congressman Bobby Scott somewhere around there, possibly as well. So out of here in Virginia, specifically in Hampton Roads in our area. So a lot of people, who's who, in attendance there at this particular service, as you can expect, for the 84-year-old civil rights and American icon there, Jesse Jackson Sr., who died just over a week or so ago after a life that saw many impacts. One thing that really stood out to me in the days following his death, as we've had people on this broadcast talk about it, just the ripple effect of his mentorship, his leadership that Jesse Jackson Sr. displayed for so many different people. But even with who he was and the height of, who he was, Sarah, I tell you what, every time that I got onto social media, there was 2, 3, 4 people that I knew personally, not in news, anything of that nature, who had a picture. They were posting pictures with him. Truly a person of the people, particularly within those communities that he lived in and was there for sure. So that is going to start around noon officially. I do believe right now you can hear the choir that's singing. But we expect for the actual service, the program, to begin at noon, 11 o'clock Central Time there in Chicago. All right, we're going to take another quick break here, and we'll be back with more on Live Impact News. Okay, thank you for staying with us here. We got to bring up something one more time here. The Hope for Life Rescue, our Furcast. That could roll off my tongue there a little bit better. Oh my gosh, they are getting active right now. As we said before, March 18th, that's the date that we want you to mark on your calendars for our Pause for Life charity event there. We're going to be raising money for these lovely animals and so many more. Not just raising resources and funding for Pause for Life, but also for adoption. We want people to be able to adopt, and that these these lovely animals can find forever homes. They're so cute. I think we just wanted to bring it back up one more time, Sarah, so it can lift our moods. Because look at that. Look how happy they are. Tails are wagging. You know, I would love if we had audio. Do we have audio? Can we listen to it? We don't have audio? Oh, man, that would make it even better. Okay, they got to clean up a spot because we know puppies, they make a little bit of messes. That's okay. That's okay. But look at them right there. I'm glad that we have this. Again, if you want to watch this just in your own time, maybe you love animals, you love dogs, then you can do so for 4 straight hours here on 13 News Now Plus. We have a cam for it, this cam that you can just pull it up, just like they have right now on YouTube. It's really popular with the fireplace. Well, Fridays around this time of day, just pull up the Furcast, so you can have these puppies right there in the backdrop. So we wanted to bring that up one more time for you, and obviously you can see our sponsors there too, who are helping to provide this opportunity to raise money, awareness, and hopefully, again, forever homes for those lovely, lovely animals. Oh, it's so beautiful. And they are cute. Oh, Sarah.
I was like, you know what I would name the white one?
What?
Spot. Because he has a spot.
Oh, yes. That is so good. And
you can't see it right now, but he does.
On Spot's back, right?
Yeah.
Look at that. Oh, my goodness. I would probably name him Domino. Not going to lie to you.
That's better. Spot is overdone. You're right.
Domino would probably be his name or her name for me. Oh, my gosh. Oh, love it so much. Okay. Do we need to talk about the news now? I guess we do. All right, again, thank you, everybody, for sticking with us here for Live Impact News. We've had such a great show so far, and great guests who have been here. We want to give you one more live look from outside of the church where Jesse Jackson Sr., his public celebration services, homegoing, what we call it, what they are calling it, celebration of life there for the late civil rights leader. You can see there that the choir has already begun to sing, and we do, again, expect some big names to speak for this program that will start in just over 10 minutes. The line, though, outside, you can imagine there are people from all over who are coming in to honor the life of Jesse Jackson Sr., who was not only an American icon, but also did so much internationally, even on behalf of the United States. And so it will be a packed house there. And after this, there will still be a private service for the family that will be held later on. But again, this will start at noon, our time, in Chicago. But something that has already happened, you may be familiar with the case of Karen Reed. That is the woman who was accused at one point in the death of her Boston police officer boyfriend back in 2022. And after 2 separate trials, the first one having a jury that could not reach a conclusion, and then the second one being acquitted of all of the serious offenses, she was back in court today as the family of her late partner has also filed a civil suit in which she is a part of that. And today she was in court because they're requesting on her team's behalf whether or not she can receive back her cell phone, which the family who is filing the civil suit against her in this case believe that that phone has incriminating evidence on it, and she should not be able to receive that back. All the while, in the backdrop of this as well, Reed has filed her own lawsuit against other people who were there at her home, at that residence back in 2022, the night that her now late boyfriend died. So a lot is going on to this. We captured the moments while she was in court today in Boston. We're going to play that for you and gather any details that we can from that update. So just wanted to kind of guide you into what you're about to see here for the next few minutes.
Hey, all persons have any due for this honorable justice. Judge today. Now sitting in the county of Plymouth, within, before the Commonwealth, draw near. Give your attendance, you shall be heard. God said the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, this honorable court is now in session. Please be seated.
Good morning, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Please.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Friday, March 6, 2026. This is the Civil D session at Plymouth Superior Court before the Honorable Justice Mark Gilday. Your Honor, the matter before the court is civil action number 2483 CV 00692. Paul O'Keefe, individually and personal representative of the estate of John Joseph O'Keefe III et al. Versus C&C Hospitality LLC, doing business as C&F McCarthy's et al. Counsel, if you could please state your name for the record, we can start with the plaintiffs.
Good morning, Your Honor. Attorney Mark Diller on behalf of the plaintiffs.
Morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Attorney Dan Buck on behalf of the plaintiffs.
Morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Alan Jackson on behalf of Ms. Reed.
Morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Aaron Rosenberg on behalf of Ms. Reed.
Morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Arthur Maravellis on behalf of Karen Reed.
Morning. Morning to everyone else that's here in the gallery. I'd remind those in the gallery to keep in mind the instructions that the court officer gave you a little while ago. Before we get started, can I talk to counsel at the side of the bench, please?
So here's what we have learned so far as they are, you can see the previously recorded bit in which the attorneys all are approaching the bench and having a conversation. What we have since learned about today's proceedings is that the attorney for the family of Boston police officer John O'Keefe, he's the one who died in 2022, did ultimately withdraw their motion to stop the return of Karen Reed's cell phone, saying that they would work with Reed's legal team and try to reach an agreement on how to access them. Now, this comes after there was a motion that was filed saying that her phones should not be returned because they believed that there was incriminating evidence on them. But it turns out, as we would see potentially here in court, that's being reported that the attorney for the family, the O'Keefe family, admitted that he may have misinterpreted Reed's words that they said that were found on that phone. So I do believe we brought it back to the moment in which they began to have their conversations again publicly. Sarah, if we want to go ahead and play that now for the last few minutes prior to the end of this stream.
All right. Short recess.
So that is the update. Again, we're watching this. We didn't get to watch it earlier because it happened during the stream, and we were obviously in our interview with Bob McNabb at that time over the economic impact of the U.S.-Iran conflict. But that is the news in the Karen Reed case today, is that they did withdraw that motion. So they are going to work on a solution to where she can get back her cell phones. This, though, again, in that civil case that's been brought by the family of the Boston police officer who died. I think, you know, with that, what we can do here, Sarah, just to end it out, I do think people are probably wanting to find some place where they can watch the homegoing service for Jesse Jackson Sr. So we're just going to go ahead and end our stream here with that. We'll take you live to Chicago, where in just moments we are expecting to see the service begin here at noon for the late civil rights icon Jesse Jackson Sr. You can see there that place is packed as people have made their way into the building for this public celebration of life, in which that's the way that Jesse Jackson Sr.'s family has described it and as they have planned. So we'll end this stream with this so you can listen in live. Again, this is coming to you from Chicago.
Come on, let's give God a praise. Oh, come on, aren't you ready to celebrate God? I mean, we came here to celebrate God. Hallelujah. I need for everyone to take their seats. We're bringing the family in, and we can't bring them in with you standing. So please take a seat. Even if there are seats in the back of all of these sections, can you please move that direction? Ushers, we need everyone in their seats, please. Ladies and gentlemen, no photos. Can you please take your seats? Can you please take your seats, and can we honor the great, the one and only Reverend Jesse Jackson? Can we honor him with obedience? Amen. Can we honor him with obedience? Amen. We need everyone in their seats, please. Hallelujah. And ladies and gentlemen, these rows that are reserved, that is for the family. You must move. No. It's only for the family that's processing. Everyone else must move. Ushers.